everyone, welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting and our weekly look back at the hot comics from 6 months ago. This week we're looking back at the hot comics from September 3rd, 2021, and I'm recording this on March 3rd, 2022. As always, I give those dates so you know when this information is actually most relevant because the market is always moving and changing. And as always, we're looking back at the CBSI Hot Top 10 and the Comic Tom Key Collector Hottest Trending Comics of the Week. Those are the two lists I use. I've been using them for over 3 years to do the look back. This week we got 17 books between those two lists. They each put out a list of 10 each week. We combined the lists. There was 3 books on both. So we got 17 books to see how they've done over the last 6 months that were books of the moment back in early September. So without further ado, let's see how these books did. First up, we have Noctera, number 1. This is a Scott Snyder project that hit the list because it had been optioned for a TV show. It caused raw copies of the A cover to jump up to $20 to $30. A 9.8 was hitting 166 for a high that week. Now it's a $5 to $18 book for a raw copy. 9.8, most recent 9.8s have been going for around 80. So this one definitely backed up marginally. On the raw side, I would say this is I'll be back. Marginally a trap though, but definitely down overall, which is not unusual. Option news, you get away from it. No news recently. These books almost always back up when that happens. Next, we got the first of 2, 4, 6 covers this week. We got Moon Knight number 1, the second print, 1 in 25, John Romita Jr. variant. So another incentive on a second print, making the list. This one was only going for 45 to 50 back then, which usually means it's going to end up for a round ratio because it didn't even break double, and that's what this one has done. It's a 15 to 35, so basically the median's right around ratio here. This has definitely turned into a bit of a trap. It's basically cut in half from what it was 6 months ago. So I didn't think this cover was that great when we saw it to start with, and it has not sustained overall. Next, we got a book that's all about covers, and that is Stray Dogs Cover Gallery number 1. This was a one per store that collected all the different covers they put together for the Stray Dogs series, or most of the different covers, I should say. I don't know if it had them all, but it didn't have any new content. It was just a book of covers, and people were paying $100 to $150 for this when it first came out. I was like, it just seems like a terrible investment, and it turned out to be one. This is now a $10 to $50 book, with most of the sales right in like that middle range, 30-ish range. 9.8 did go for 100, but this turned into a dumpster fire. I mean, it just, from 125 down to 30-ish. Thought this was kind of an odd book to be chasing, and it's turned out to be just that. Next, we have Ultimate Fallout 4, the facsimile, the Marco Djurjevic variant, limited to 1,000. So this is a facsimile of that 1 in 25, that original 1 in 25 cover that goes for crazy money now, of the first appearance of Miles. They reprinted it as a limited variant for this facsimile. Raw copies were going for $75 back then. Now they're going for 40 to 50, 9.8, 150 to 225. So this one turned into an I'll be back, definitely down a little bit. I thought this one might be worth it just because it's so hard to get the original version of this, that it might stay in that $75 range, but it has not. It has definitely backed up. With that, we're going to move into America, number 12. This is the last issue of America Chavez's first series, and kind of a cool cover, but because of the last issue thing, it was a little bit limited, fewer copies of this, and this has all had to do with her going to be a part of the Doctor Strange movie. We still know that, but this jumped up to a $75 comic for this last issue. Now it's a $45 to $65 book. 9.8 will cost you $150 to $225. So another book that backed up a little bit, definitely an I'll be back. This is another one I thought might be worth it because back then Doctor Strange was supposed to be coming out this month. I thought we'd be right at the release date, but we have not. They've backed it up. But even with the recent trailer, this book is still down somewhat. Next, we have Umbrella Academy Apocalypse Suite the hardcover number one, or the hardcover. So it's a hardcover collected of this Umbrella Academy series. This was a one per store thank you. I don't know why I put this under covers. This should have been in a different section anyway. Back then, this one per store hardcover was going for $50 to $60. And now it's a $25 to $35 book. So this was basically dropped in half of what it was back then. So it definitely turned into a bit of a trap, going for basically 50% of what sales were going for back then. It is the same cover as the number one, the variant of the original number one of the series. But yeah, this one per store hardcover is still a nice book, but definitely not going for what it was back then. Our last actual cover of the week is Marvel Action Origins number 3, the Agnes Grabowski 1 in 10. This one was going for 20 to 25 back then, so double ratio to a little more, which usually means it's not going to hold. This one has not. I'll be honest, I'm not a huge fan of her style, but I've seen some covers of hers that I like. This one was not one of them. I was surprised that people were jumping on this. And really, there's only been one recent sale of this last few months. One sale, it went for $7.50. This book definitely turned into a trap. Just not a lot of sustained interest in this book at all. They're still asking a little more than this and why it's not moving. With that, we got several actual Comic Buzz books this week. First up, we have Avengers Forever number 1. And this basically hit the list because Marvel announced that they were starting a new comic event when they were bringing back the Avengers Forever title. So people went to get this one. Didn't make a lot of sense to me back then because it might not even be connected other than the name. But anyway, raw copies only jumped up to like $10 back then. There was just a lot of sales. It was one of those that Tom and I occasionally put on the list where it's just a big spike in sales, not necessarily a big movement in value. And this book's still basically going for 5 to 20, with most sales being around $10. So I put this as a steady, and I'll be back. You can get it for a little less. You can pay a little more depending on how much you want it. But yeah, this one's kind of just sitting where it was at. Next, we have Spider-Man number 1, the first meeting of the 616, Peter Parker and Miles Morales. Back then, raw copies were going 20 to 40. 9.8 was hitting 220. This is interesting. This was on opposite lists from last week. Last week when we talked about it, it was going for 50 to 60, but it already kind of backed up to a $20 to $40 book by the week after. And really, I don't know that it was ever truly a $50 to $60 book. There was a couple sales there, but it was like just a couple sales when people were talking about it. And then it dropped back down to this 20 to 40. And that's basically where this book is currently sitting. It's 15 to 40 right now. 9.8 have backed up a little bit, 150 to 200 from that high of 220 back then. So this one I'm going to also call pretty steady, a bit of an I'll be back. I don't have a lot of interest in this first meetings, but some people clearly have started collecting these as several of these have gotten more interest in the last year than they had previously gotten. Next, we have Pirate Queen number 1. This is another one of those bad idea books that came out. It seemed like everybody was jumping on these when they first came out. And basically, this was kind of a cool concept. It was part of what was driving this one here. A pregnant pirate seeking revenge. So, I mean, it's kind of an interesting, different take on some stuff. But back then, it jumped up to a $20 to $30 book because Bad Ideas was limited, and this one was supposedly going to be a cool story. I haven't heard anything about this since, and now it's a $5 to $15 book. A 9.8 did go for $125, but there's like 2 sales there. So not a ton of sales or data there to really build off of. But on the raw side, this definitely turned into a trap and backed up. So next, we have another bad idea book. This is Monster Kill Squad number 1. And this one also at release jumped up to a $20 to $30 book. Back then, I put it as an I'll be back. I thought, but there might be both of these might be traps just because the bad idea thing was felt like it was running its course. And it seems to be, this one's also now a $5 to $15 book. But the 9.8 sale on here, the recent 9.8 sale of this went for $30. So yeah, that person did not do well trying to slab that book. Definitely another book that turned into a trap that was part of that bad idea, which seems to be like almost all of them except for the very first one. and ENIAC. Those that what Hero Action, Hero, yeah, I think, and then ENIAC are really the only two that have maintained any sort of value that were bad idea books. With that, we're going to move into a little Disney Plus news. Basically, we got news this week that we were going to get a Rocketeer show, and that caused Star Slayer #2 to hit the list. This is the first appearance of the Rocketeer. So with the news of a show coming to Disney Plus, this hit the list, jumped up, raw copies jumped up to $40 to $60. 9.8 jumped all the way up to $5.50. I thought this one might be worth it, but I should have known better. It's more of a long-term thing. We haven't got any additional news. This one has backed up as well, just like a typical option book. I really didn't think that through when I said worth it on this one. Now it's a $15 to $45 book. 9.8 is $250 to $300. So this actually has turned into a trap over this 6 month period. I do think once we get more information on the show, this will jump back up a little bit. But yeah, this is definitely, again, avoid news, and I should have known better than to suggest this one was probably going to be worth it. Next, we got Werewolf by Night, #1. This was on the list last week. This is the first appearance of Jake Gomez version of Werewolf by Night, and this has everything to do with people specking on that character will be a part of the MC Marvel Halloween special that's coming to Disney Plus. Back then, raw copies were going for $20 to $40. 9.8 hit $400. In this case, raw copies are still going $20 to $40, but 9.8 going for $150 to $300. So the 9.8s have backed up a little bit. So overall, I call this steady. I'll be back because you can do a little better on all of it. Interesting. This is another one that switched lists between weeks. Last week when CBSI put it on the list, they were saying 50. When Tom was saying 25, so I went and looked up prices. Is how I came to the 20 to 40, which was the actual sales back then. So next we got Invincible Iron Man #7. This is the David Lopez variant, the woman power variant, that with Mary Jane on the cover. This is the first appearance / cameo of Riri Williams. Back then, a 9.8 hit $1,100, which was an all-time high, which caused us to hit the list. Now, a 9.8 will cost you $500 to $600. Raw copies will cost you $200 to $350. So this one has turned into a trap over the 6 month period as well. And this is, becoming more and more obvious with a lot of these MCU and these Disney Plus show books. News caused these things to hit really high heights, but as soon as it's over, they're backing up a little bit. They're definitely settling for more reasonable prices, particularly now that we've gotten away from the craziness of 2021 collecting. So the lull of the winter, plus the fact that we haven't gotten any Riri news for a while, has caused this book to definitely back up considerably and be a lot more affordable. But I'm sure we'll get some Riri news soon, and this book will probably jump back up. Next, we have New Avengers #7, the first appearance of the Illuminati. Back then, raw copies were up to $20. 9.8 was up to $285 over rumors that Professor X was going to be in Doctor Strange. The trailer recently confirmed that. So as a result, this is up. I will say, in the meantime, it was kind of an I'll be back until the trailer came out. But now it's up $20 to $80 on the raw side. 9.8 is going for $450 to $600. So this is up in a straight cash book over the 6 month period. I will say it's already down a little bit from when the week right after the trailer. It was more of a $75 to $100 book on the raw side. Pushing $700-800 on the 9.8 side. So it's already kind of settled a little bit after the initial hype that we got from that trailer. So, all right, next we have 2 books left. Both of them were related to rumors around Spider-Man No Way Home. First up, we have Amazing Spider-Man #546, the first appearance of Mr. Negative and Jackpot. And this hit the list because an image from the movie showed the food bank that Mr. Negative owns in the comics that we found out later was Aunt May was working at. Back then, it caused raw copies to jump up to a $15 book. A 9.8 hit $200. For some reason, I don't know what my thought process was behind calling this worth it at $15. Although, yeah, it's got a couple of keys here, and it's basically it's now a $5 to $35 book, with most of the sales being in the 10 to 20 range. 9.8s are now going for $250 to $275. So overall, this is up and worth it. So I'm actually surprised I got this prediction right to be a point, because I'm not sure what really prompted me to go with worth it here, but I did. And last but not least, we got Amazing Spider-Man number 337. This is kind of the return of the Sinister Six. I'll be honest. So this is kind of only the second appearance of this group since the Silver Age. So raw copies back then jumped up to $18. 9.8 hit $275 because everybody thought we were getting all those villains brought together from the old movies, which we did. Although they weren't really a Sinister Six, but anyway. Raw copies were going for $5 to $20, or now going for $5 to $20. 9.8 or 175 to 225. So this one's backed up a little bit. Another I'll Be Back. So overall, we ended up with 2 books up, which is more than we've gotten here recently. Getting 2 books that actually went up in a week is kind of crazy good here lately. 3 books stayed steady, and the other 12 all dropped back. So this is more of a typical ratio. We've been kind of an extreme dropping back compared to here lately, but this is a little more of a typical ratio with 5 or so books either staying steady or going up. So I want to thank you guys for watching, and we'll catch you next time.